Welcome everyone. This is the podcast, the very first edition of the podcast with the name Unvaccinated and Healthy. And that is because we want to share the stories of unvaccinated, healthy, resilient people all around the world. And we believe this is important because all around the world there are main two stories occurring right now. One story is the one that obviously most of the people followed. That story is there is a dangerous, super deadly virus. You need to vaccinate. You need to do certain things in order to be protected. But there is another side of that story. And the surprising and very amazing thing about this story it is that the people who did almost other things are also healthy and are also making a very good life. So I think it is time for all of us who are in the other side of this story just to share our stories. This is not a podcast. This is not a podcast about any political issue. This is not a podcast about any ideological issue. Its only main purpose it is only to share stories of amazing people all around the world. So welcome to this podcast. Today, to this very first edition, we have Luigi Pissani. He's actually Peruvian, living in the US. But Luigi, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, originally, yes, from Peru, been living in the US, embraced the nomadic life even more, obviously more than 2 years ago at this point. Um, Professionally, I'm the founder and CEO of Feel. It's a lifestyle practice that teaches people a deeper understanding about their body, a greater self-awareness to their environment, and understanding the connection that's there. Something that a lot of us seem to miss, um, and very much just a vibrant human being that has faith in all the possibilities that we're not even aware of in life.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's amazing. By the way, you have a beautiful scenery right there. Where are you at?
Yes, this is currently Nicaragua. This is currently San Juan del Sur. This is a place called Costa Dulce. And it's a bit of a sort of a retreat center, kind of. They do a lot of surfing and other sort of things. And I'm not a surfer, but I do believe in at some part of life throughout the season to embrace other environments, other seasons. So for now, right now, this is kind of jungle and beach. So that's what we're exposing ourselves to.
Oh, that's amazing. It is amazing to be with nature. It's amazing to take some sunlight. It is amazing to breathe some fresh and clean air. So that is
Mhm.
great hearing from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get started with this interesting dialogue. First and foremost, are you vaccinated against COVID?
No.
Okay. How,
uh,
and do you know if you have got or have gotten COVID before?
So that's the interesting thing, because according to some of the symptoms that came out, especially in the beginning, anything from your elbow hurting, to having chest pains and not being able to breathe right. The one that my partner, my wife, and I both had was a loss of uh, the olfactory sense. So we couldn't smell. We lost that sense. And for my wife herself, she ended up also losing her taste. Um, but that was the only thing that I had experienced myself. So at that point, I guess I could say possibly, maybe, pretty sure. But at the same time, it's not like when it happened, we immediately, fell into the fear mode and went directly to go get tested to see if we did, if we didn't. We just sort of rode the wave as an expression.
Okay, but just mild symptoms, right? Anything severe or to be kind of worried about.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't be worried, honestly, if you lost your sense of smell? And that's part of the truth of it. It's a scary thing to all of a sudden, anything from an incense to the food that you're cooking, even while you're going to the bathroom. There's a very human aspect about being able to just smell everything. And when that's lost, it is sort of shocking and it is kind of scary. But we understood, and this was the place where I've been in life, is that um, you can't get too ahead of yourself. You can't allow these things to sort of build up, and you just have to take it literally a day at a time. And it's a very, very fine practice of presence, and being very into the moment, and just, realizing, okay, it wasn't my story yesterday, but today, okay, like I can't smell, but then maybe tomorrow and the next day, you don't know. And so you just take it a day at a time. And for us, it was, all in all, it was less than a week.
Okay, okay. So just a few days and just mild symptoms.
Yeah, if that.
And any other symptom after that, a kind of a breakthrough, maybe infection or another time when you had another like symptoms like that?
No, that was the interesting thing, because I've had the flu before in my life. I've had a fever so bad when I was in college that I was hospitalized once upon a time. I've had gastrointestinal issues. But this one was outside of just not being able to smell. It was the calmest and, the less threatening thing that had ever happened to me. And granted, the interesting thing was that it coincided with having to take an antibiotic that I took to try to get rid of some parasites. So we were in Mexico at the time. This was over 2 years ago. This was 2021, actually, right just after like February, I think, or something like that, of 21. And it was at that point where we took an antibiotic. I had the sort of body fever, I think they call it. So bed rest. So I couldn't, go do anything active. And then all of a sudden, 2 days after that, give or take, is when the loss of smell came. So it wasn't one after another. It just sort of, popped up out of nowhere.
Okay, okay. And another very interesting thing now, we are almost, or I think even more than 2.5 years after when all of this started. So during
Right.
these 2.5 years and 1.5 almost, having these injections, having these vaccines, and how is the difference that you have witnessed between your social circle, between the ones who took the jab and between the ones who are not vaccinated? Have you seen any difference?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, and I didn't run the statistics myself of going through every single person, but to my memory's recollection, every person that I had met that taken one dose at least, right, of the vaccination did ended up getting sick, and in a lot worse of a fashion than I was. So they had an extended fever, or they actually had some of the breathing problems or whatever. I didn't exactly ask and try to get a list from them, of like, oh, and does your body hurt? And did you also lose your sense of smell and things of that nature, just out of respect? Because in any case, when anyone is ever sick, you're always wishing the best, for them, for their recovery. You're not exactly trying to nitpick and figure out exactly what's wrong with them. You're just like, hey, man, I went through something similar. You're going to be just fine, regardless of whether you agree with their choice or not. You're always wanting to get the most out of their health as well. You want them to, you want them to feel better about what's happening with them anyway.
Oh, totally agree. I mean, we are here to support all of our loved ones, and
Yeah.
at the end, we are human beings in this life experience. And related to your process of decision, what was your process of your decision process to say, I'm not going to take this path? And I think I know different things about health, but this path that everyone is telling about, I'm not going to follow that one. What was the process decision for taking another path?
It's very interesting, Paulo, because it was like a mix of a few things. Number one, it was not necessarily believing in the pharmaceutical industry, right? And thinking that, oh, all of a sudden they actually really care about our health, and sort of ignoring all the different infomercials and ads that we see in the United States, where it's like, take this pill to sort of help you with your anxiety, but then you're going to have all these other symptoms happen to you. I was a person that years ago, because of acne, I took something called Accutane. And Accutane, they said one of the byproducts was suicidal thoughts. And that was probably one of the worst times that I had as a kid, because very much I was a kid at that time. And there's obviously other, vaccinations that I had taken. I have a goddaughter that I had to take something called for whooping cough. That's something I wasn't afraid to take because it was, actually, it was very interesting. My brother basically gave me a choice of like, if you don't take this, we won't really feel comfortable with you coming and seeing her and visiting and the whole thing. But this was before, it became a mainstream thing, right? So this is more of a family issue, but nonetheless, it was not having a distrust towards the pharmaceutical industry. Also understanding that never in the history of humanity has there been one particular virus that wiped everyone out, right? We've always somewhat survived. People, were lost, but survival and adaptation is a very real thing. So it was having that understanding of, okay, because this is being rushed, because it's experimental, because the people doing the testing don't want to release the results for over 70 plus years. All these different red flags and things that on a logical side just personally didn't make sense for me. And then also believing, again, in the human immune system, and understanding like, okay, I'm not a heavy drinker. I don't by any means live a lifestyle of, where I'm borderline obese or, live a lifestyle where I'm not caring for myself. And then seeing like, almost like I will take my chances in a way. But again, yeah, I think it was just a mix.
No, totally. I think in the beginning, every one of us who don't trust that much in pharmaceutical industry, I'm also one of those guys who don't trust at all in pharmaceutical industry. I mean, if the entire healthcare sector and the entire pharma industry were doing actually some good, health in general in the population will be better than some years before, but that is not the case. so something is really, really wrong right there. But yeah, one of the things I think.
And Paulo, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just something that I come across as well. Something that was really that really stood out to me when I was in school and I was kind of going through my education was for my studies in exercise physiology, preventative medicine, right? And focusing on the prevention of disease was always the number one thing. So when you're looking at how the human body can sort of optimize their health, none of those things were being talked about. And at that time, as a matter of fact, the things that were beneficial to our health, physical activity, spending time in the outdoors, even to an extent, obviously, like gathering, in a small community as well. All of those things was being ostracized. All of those things were being sort of pushed away to the side of like, no, that's not going to help you.
Totally.
But there was never an emphasis on any part of, hey, listen, it might be better for you to start, eating a certain way, to just to make sure you're getting the proper nutrients into your body. There was no focus on that, and that stood out to me as being like, okay, this is the message that's being, propagated. And we know when it comes to weight loss, there's not a magic, fix it all sort of pill. Why would it be any different in this case?
Oh, totally agree. And just in a moment, we'll talk about health as health because that is a topic I think we both have in common, and it is an amazing topic. But before going to that, you being married or having your wife, your partner, and also you guys are working on your entrepreneurial project together. But one thing it is to have the individual decision, and other thing is to make a decision as a couple. So how was the process of making this decision as a couple, and what was the impact at their families, with their friends, with jobs? I don't know. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, because we run our own company, we did not have to fall into the decision of some other body, some other governing body that says, if you don't do this, we're firing you, we're letting you go. And I really feel that for a lot of people that didn't have that choice. That's a very sad thing. It's something that at some point needs to be voiced and brought to light, because now I'm pretty well aware the CDC ended up changing their whole stance, on the sort of process of it all. It's like, okay, if you get it, you don't have to necessarily quarantine yourself. And then
Sorry,
we
sorry,
can
Manny.
treat people.
Sorry, sorry, Luigi. It's like saying, sorry, we were wrong, but it's okay. Let's continue.
Yeah. Let's just kind of shift this aside. And so that's one of the things where I realized that was part of. It's not a distrust as so much as just knowing better, because you can't necessarily live your life putting your health in the hands of someone else. And those people that do sometimes do it way too late. They never really took onus. They never really took responsibility. They never really accepted that they have a hand in the way that they live their life, and the vitality that they're able to get out of this life as well. So as a couple, it was pretty easy. We just realized, like, this isn't necessarily going to fix it. And because we had our situation, I'm pretty sure before the vaccine was actually, or maybe around the same time it was starting to roll out, right? I just looked at it, in a way of like, hey, you know what? If they're going to push this in a way where they say, if you don't have this, your job, your ability to travel, your ability to go into certain restaurants, right? To me, it had the same sort of rhythm, let's say, as what happened to the Jewish community and everyone else that suffered during the time of the Holocaust and World War II. For you to all of a sudden have to, present a paper, a digital format, right? To say that you're this kind of a person, that to me just never made sense.
Totally. And by the way, I don't know if you guys, there was this time when someone asked you about if you were compliant about all the things that they were telling you to do, and then you asked them like something like, hey, wait a minute, it is about health or it is about being compliant? Because if it is about health, come on, look.
Yeah, completely. I'm well aware that there were several people that sort of continued having I'll just call it a disregard for the health, because if you're eating a certain way, and if you're not really getting the most out of your body, so you're not physically active, you're not even actively reading, you're not actively exploring, you're not actively, living life. That's not necessarily the type of people that I put on a pedestal of, oh, this is who I need to be like, type of thing.
Totally.
So, yeah.
No, totally. And it's been really hard for many people. In our case, we had to shut down our office. We had to lay off the last people we had working in our office, because our customers were mostly in higher education. And you know what happened with education, with schools. And also with some instances in government, but for local government, we were not a priority at all. And but for you guys, what was the most difficult part during all this process? What have been the most difficult part for you?
I would say this was during our stay in Mexico. So this was I want to say maybe like 2 months after we had gone through our own little process, and then we were, much better. We got back our sense of smell, everything like that, because we stayed a total of almost 5 months in a small town in Mexico, in Oaxaca. And there was a moment where we were walking our dog Luna down the street. We were completely by ourselves, and the local police passed by and asked us where our masks were. So we had to wear a mask in public, like outside, in the outdoors, in the open air. Not a threat to anyone. It was uncomfortable. It wasn't. It didn't lead to the cops beating on me. Didn't have to pay them off, anything like that. Luckily, because I'm fluent in Spanish, I was able to communicate with them. But what I was able to find out later on is that they were using that as a tactic to squeeze money out of tourists.
Okay.
You know, so sort of threatening them of giving a fine or taking them to the local jail for a day in order to get some kind of recompensa, like some kind of
reward,
squeeze or reward, right? That to me was probably the most uncomfortable thing, because even when we had to travel and had to present our negative tests, every place that we've traveled to since then, where we've had to take a negative test, we've always been negative. As a matter of fact, we've never tested positive when traveling, right? Again, after the situation. And luckily, of course, obviously not having to worry about any sort of vaccine card or anything like that. Like that to me is just like, yeah.
No,
so I feel very, very sorry for people, I guess, like in Australia, people in Canada, where they don't present just the one time that you got it. What is it, 4 or 5 injections now or whatever?
I think they're going for the fifth.
Right.
Yes. No, that's yeah. But fortunately it's been not that bad for you guys, fortunately, in that way, because yes, business were closed, were shut down, people is broke, still broke, can't recover, and many things. And now talking about a little bit about health as health, because one of the things that for me has been most shocking during this time is how little people know about health. They think health is about taking some pills or having some injections, and they think that health is being able to walk or to breathe. Right. And if they can breathe and they can walk, then they say, "Oh, I'm healthy." And but wanted to ask you, in your case, how do you know you are a healthy person? How healthy you are? What are the metrics, if you have any metric or some benchmarking or study you make for knowing how healthy you are?
I guess the first metric, obviously, is the effect of stress on my body, because stressful situations will continue no matter what. And living in a stressful environment, whether you're all of a sudden getting onto a bus, or you're boarding a plane, or you're about to start a meeting, there's some form of stress that's involved. But how does that stress affect me, right? Is one of my metrics. The other one of my metrics is how many days am I spending bedridden, right? So incapable of movement, incapable of getting up out of my bed and going to do the basic things. It's interesting what happens when you lose the ability to walk, as an example. So from an injury, I've mentioned to you in a different conversation, I've had a nice opportunity in my body where my left calf, I wasn't able to push off very well. I wasn't able to walk very well. I wasn't able to run or jump or do things like that. One of my joys in life is being able to dance. When that's taken away from you, you miss it. And you all of a sudden look forward to nothing more than to be able to do that again. So when it comes to sickness and illness, right, it takes away all of these very basic things that we take for granted all of the time. There is no way to live this abundant, life that we have if all of a sudden we're stripping that away from ourselves because we're not making better decisions in the way that we eat and how physically active we are. I personally have my own pursuits when it comes to my strength, and my strength is never ending. I continue to make new adaptations until the point where, God will just be like, hey, now you're 85 years old, and obviously you're not going to press, 100 and something pounds over your head, and so be it. But it's not about necessarily extending my life, but just making the most out of whatever that time is, whatever, that life actually looks like.
Oh, and that's great, because again, this topic about how little people in general, the general population, knows about health, it is astonishing. For me, it is even more than astonishing. It is like you come to this experience called life, then you are assigned some ship. If this life is a journey, our ship is our body, And so if this is your ship, you need to take care of your ship. But most people don't even know how that ship works, what it needs, like to be in optimal conditions. And so since when have you been interested in knowing, learning about health? If you could tell us a bit about that.
Since I was a kid. Since I was a child, I was a very overweight, borderline obese kid. But, thanks to my dad, thanks to my brother, even thanks to my mom, we were active. My dad was one of those dads that, despite him working 2 jobs, and more, he would take us out to go play basketball. In my summers, we spent our summers in Peru, and we'd have to all of a sudden transition from playing basketball to playing football, soccer, right? With our cousins. Even though it was still uncomfortable to put on certain clothes, right? Even though like at that age, you're already starting to form certain body dysmorphias, right? So you start sort of comparing yourself to other kids and seeing how some skinny kids can wear, this kind of shirt or tuck their shirt in. And then if I tuck my shirt in, all of a sudden you see this fat come out. But it's one of those things where, it was always in our nature to continue moving in some fashion. But my brother was the first inspiration. He was the first person to tell my mom, hey, can you give me a little bit less food, a little bit less quantity? Because we're our first generation Peruvian family in Miami. We obviously did not know a thing about vegetables to that extent. Everything that we ate was, protein and carbohydrate, right? White rice galore, pizza every Friday night, fritanga, Nicaraguan food every Thursday. And then of course I had cereal every night as well as ice cream. So it's like I had that experience of what life was like in a state that I didn't really appreciate. Like you said, with the whole ship and vessel, my vessel, it wasn't going very far. And luckily, it wasn't because of an endless comparison. Because when you just compare yourself to every other person, to every other ship, in a way, it's just like you're disrespecting, right? What you have, what God has actually just given you. So because of that, understanding, now it just became a sort of just personal pursuit. And so long as I can breathe and I don't have trouble doing that, so long as I can lift up my leg and I can, sort of twist my body, so long as I can do all these simple little things, then number one, I'm going to remain in appreciation mode all of the time. So that form of like, thank you above, thank you inside, that's there. And then of course, it's a respect. Respecting that my body is able to do these things, right? And so when I do go out, say to the ocean to swim, or when I do decide to play some sports, it's sort of done in a way where, it's almost like I guess like an athlete, right? It's done with that sort of level of enthusiasm, right? Not because you're being paid to, but because at some point you have to realize like, hey man, this isn't going to be there forever, So this is like a wealth that we have. And, what kind of life could you have as an example? If you lived out in nature and all of a sudden you walked into that nature with your eyes closed, how could you really appreciate all the wonders?
Oh, truly, I'm pretty sure you have watched this movie WALL-E, where they put this future, the image of the future, and I think a good amount of the population is going towards just that image of the future that it is well presented in that movie WALL-E, and almost anyone.
I've never watched it, but I'll look into it.
Almost anyone is able to walk. Almost anyone it is overweight. Almost everyone it is they don't have a really good health, and but they have all the machinery. They have machines. They are always in front of a computer and talking to robots and so on. but their health level is pretty bad. So another thing, Luigi, it is that I don't know if having you this level of consciousness about health, about your body, about how to taking care of it. I don't know if you've been questioned by people who clearly are not healthy, and how have you managed those situations when someone who is clearly not healthy is telling you are a risk to me. You, a healthy person, are a risk to me.
Luckily, there hasn't been that kind of conversation where someone has had the la concha is what we would say in Peru. Like they've had like to all of a sudden say that. But what I will say is that earlier today, someone asked me if I take any steroids. Because of the way my body might be shaped right now. And I said, it's not because I don't believe in them, because I know that they work, but it's just that it's not what makes sense to me, right? There is no reason for me to want to inject myself with something that I know can give me a tremendous amount of, size and all these different things, but why? When it comes to the health of the other populations, it's just a matter of not really understanding, not because of a lack of education, but because when it comes to our bodies, it hasn't been a point of interest, for many people. And because they've perhaps settled into a belief system that they can't improve, like, well, this is just what life is like for us. But that only happens when a person's blinded, when they can't actually see the opportunities, that are there. And it's not that I want to see every single person on this planet like the Roman gladiators of old. I think in human history, we already had a time like that. But even in those times, the women that were, more voluptuous, that had a greater size to them, they were admired. Because if you saw a woman that was of that size, you said that woman was eating, that woman was wealthy, right? So it's very interesting, the different cycles that humanity has had in its image, of the human body. For me, it's just a matter of like, what do you, or here's a better way to format it. For fitness, right? To me, what it means is what's the best way, or what way do you actually want to fit into your body, right? Like, how do you fit best into how you see yourself? That to that level, right? Because then at that point, then it becomes completely individual. And now you don't have to worry about anything else. No magazines, no movies, not the neighbor over there, just you.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. By the way, Luigi, before going through our next and almost last topic to talk about in this podcast, we have a special guest. It is a surprise, but I think it's going to be a nice surprise. I have my mom visiting us. So my mom is here. She's one of the moms who she's a grandmother. She is my mother. And she never lacked of having all their sons and their grandsons and the grandchildren close with her during the whole pandemic. She was always full of love, love from all the people that it is around her, and she is also unvaccinated. Mom, she's just going to say hi.
Okay? Ven aquí, mami.
Aquí.
Hola, corazón.
Okay.
So beautiful.
She is my mom, and her health level is even better now than before the pandemic. But so many people just don't understand that our elderly people actually need love, need to be with them, need you to be with them, need to be careful, need to feel important, need to be around, making interesting activities. If you just isolate them, then it is highly probable that they are going to end up being less healthier than before. So my mom and my dad also, but now we have our mom here visiting us.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Paulo, because if we can just touch on love for a second and see it as a frequency, see it as a wavelength, we know that it's very easy to see a person that doesn't feel loved. It's very easy to sense a person that is angry, right? Or a person that's sad. When I mentioned, aspects of sickness when you're bedridden, right? Most people aren't that vibrant at that time. They feel a little sad about it. They feel maybe even a little angry that they are sick, right? But love is the complete opposite of all that, right? And that's the one thing that my mom, the biggest lesson that she ever instilled in me when it comes to God, when it comes to, having that sense about you, is love is endless, right? And love sort of surpasses all limitations. And when it comes to the human body, again, even in the textbooks, we don't understand all of it, right? We're so eager to take on new forms of technology when the greatest technology that we have here living embodied still hasn't been explored completely.
Totally agree.
And that's the part of me where I realize, okay, this is what I feel is true, right? And not just for myself, for all humans. And maybe if we started operating from that standpoint of having that self-love, right, that then can share, with everyone else, then perhaps we can realize that, hey, you know what? Maybe you could possibly be with a person that, is feeling like a little, sick or has like a small little symptom, but yet they're not completely, written off, right? Like they can still function. They can still, be there with them. And then, like you said, when it comes to our elderly, I used to feel a little bit bad that my brother and I no longer have any of our grandparents. All of our grandparents passed away years before any of this happened. I am not quite sure how I would have handled it as a human being if all of a sudden someone told me you cannot go see your grandparents, because the amount of love that we shared with them, it would be very, very difficult to tell me that no, you can't hug them.
Yes.
That no, you can't spend time, that type of thing. So, yeah.
No, in the moment, my both parents had COVID, and they were having some symptoms, mild symptoms. My mom had just a little bit more strong symptoms, but they were not normal. So the first thing we did is we're going to at your home, mom, and we're going to take care of you. But instead of saying they need to be alone, no one needs to be close to them because they are infected.
Right.
And things like that. No, it was let's take care of them and be with them and hug them and fill them with love. And just with this early treatment protocol, in a couple of days they were doing much better. But yeah. And so lastly, Luigi, because all of this gives us to the big question about what is health and how we can improve our health. What would you, based on your experience on what you do in your company right now, what would you advise us to care for when things related to health? Many people still think health it is taking pills, but no, health it is related to do this plus that plus that plus that plus that plus that, and all of those that's what would be your advice for taking care of our health?
If I can say now, I've come to under this belief that health is really a feeling, inside. I can tell you that there are people that are very overweight that are much more acrobatic and athletic than I am, because it's not a one size, right? sort of fits all type of approach, and it's not a only one body type is able to, be healthy, right? Um, so when it comes to people now, it's just pay attention to yourself, you know, pay attention to the way that you see yourself amongst everything around you. Take a look at nature, start learning from the way that things get done out here. Because if I'm not mistaken, when there is a certain insect, I don't know the name of the tree, but when there is a certain insect that gets to a tree, that tree and the trees around it will start sort of releasing some kind of something to then, alert the other trees that that insect is like, there, right? It's a network, right? And when it comes to us as humans, we survive and thrive a lot better when we're very attached to our network, not when we decide to go lone wolf about it. And I know that firsthand, because once upon a time I used to just see myself as a very just like, no, I don't really need community or to figure out things with other people. Mainly because of the way I was raised. I didn't like the way that my dad and my brother would teach me math. So then I just sort of pushed off any sort of help, any sort of mentorship for years in my life. But now obviously in a different place, because I understand the power of this, and it's not this that creates separation. It's not we're all in it together, so now separate everyone. It's no, we're in this journey of life together, so let's actually get together. Let's actually come together in that sense.
Oh, and that's amazing, and that's an amazing thought, because I think right now it is like it appears as if it were put in place some kind of worldwide strategy to tear people apart. That is amazing. Yeah. And no, what can save us it is to be together and to be united, and just remember that what a good music concert did to us as humanity, like a good play did to us in a theater, or a huge music festival everywhere in the world. Yeah. So those are of the things, and take some sunlight and be with nature. And as you said, so no, it's been amazing. It's been amazing talking to you, Luigi. And I'm going to put here some information about yourself, and just to finish the conversation, just see if you wanna just share with us, what do you do professionally? So maybe right now, maybe someone is watching this podcast and is going to say, I want to go to a retire or to a retire event, or I don't know what is the name of that, but I want to be there with Luigi. Tell us please, what do you do, and how can people be there with you?
Well, my own personal philosophy and my own, and this is what my, sort of is the foundation to our company. My practice is called FEEL, and it stands for Feeling Everything, Actively Living. And this has been something that I was involved with. I guess at this point, it's been over 6 years of crafting different aspects about this, but it always had this one very simple sort of approach. And it was, as I do for myself, I do for those around me and my entire environment. And I'm seeing the connection within all three. And when it comes to your physical body, it's understanding that, we can live it in a very closed off way. We can live it in a way that denies us from experiencing all of this, right? By just, like some people live it, just closing yourself off and staying indoors. Or you can choose to open yourself up. And when I say open yourself up, I mean like literally and physically, not just, walking around like you want to hug everyone, but understanding that within your own human body. And I believe in miracles of life. And I believe that there is still so much that we can get to learn about ourselves, but it's an everyday process. So even in the moments when we were sick, we understood, okay, this will not be, the rest of our life type of thing. Like we had that instilled in us. So when it comes to our company, we prefer to work with anyone, specifically in the company level, to create a sort of workplace ritual where the moment that you start your workday, you're already embracing this very this state of flow, right, for your body. So you're understanding that your desk or your chair or whatever's around you, you can hold on to, you can open yourself up, you can release certain tensions in your body, because the more sort of aware you are of those tensions and all these different things, the less of an effect that it has on you. Because it only has a great effect when it surprises you, right? But if it doesn't surprise you, then you're just like, okay, just another thing. I have this little thing. Okay, no problem. But it doesn't become like, oh my God, I need a neck brace and now surgery and all these different things. So I encourage anybody that comes across your video, number one, to continue following you on this journey of just having the conversation, because this is a dialogue that we've had. All we've done is had this open communication and dialogue as to what our stories have been, but your body has been saying the same thing to people, or has been saying the same thing to you over the years. And every injury is a new chapter, right? Every sickness, a new, verse type of thing, right? So read it, listen to it, be open to what it's saying to you, but then have the conversation, as well. Don't just ignore it, right? We can't live this life ignoring everything that's around us. So yeah, that's it.
Oh, amazing conversation, Luigi. Thank you very much. I'm sharing the information where people can find you. And
Cool.
so if they want to reach out to you, to write you an email or something, I'm putting
LinkedIn.
I'm putting the information also about LinkedIn. Thank you very much, Luigi, and we'll keep connected, and hopefully
Amen.
to be with you guys in some point in the future.
Yeah. By all means. Thank you so much, Paulo. All right.